The first time I saw it, I didn't have a word for it. I was watching a documentary about daily life in Japan, and there was this small, unhurried moment. A boy, maybe 6 years old, quietly crawling into his mother's lap while she was mid-conversation with another adult. She didn't stop talking. She didn't say, "Not now." She simply let one hand rest on his back and kept going, and the boy settled, like something in him found its place. I remember thinking, why does that feel so different from what I would have done? Because in that moment, most of us would reach for the same handful of phrases. "You're okay. Sit with the grown-ups. Wait your turn." We say those things with love. We say them because we believe independence is the goal, and that we're helping by pointing toward it early. But there is a name for what that mother gave her son instead, and it is one of the quietest, most rigorously studied ideas in child psychology. It's called Amae. And once I found it, I couldn't stop seeing it everywhere. There's a concept behind that moment, and 3 concrete things Japanese caregivers do almost without thinking. Stay with me. By the end, there's one phrase you can try tonight that sends a completely different signal to your child's nervous system. When I started researching Amae, I expected folk tradition passed down through generations. What I found instead was a clinical concept, the kind that lives in developmental psychology journals, not parenting blogs. In 1973, Japanese psychiatrist Takeo Doi published a book called The Anatomy of Dependence. Doi had trained in the United States and spent years working with patients on both sides of the Pacific, puzzling over something he observed in Japanese family life that resisted translation into any Western framework. He could see it clearly, but every English word he reached for, dependency, regression, indulgence, missed the thing entirely. What he was trying to name was specific, the quiet, accepted dependence a child shows when leaning on a trusted adult without shame. Not clinginess, not immaturity. The natural, embodied impulse to say, without words, "I need you close right now." And the cultural expectation that the adult will simply receive that, fully, without minimizing it, without hurrying it away. Amae is written gan-i in Japanese. Doi argued it wasn't unique to Japan, it was a universal human need. But he observed that in Japanese family life, there were visible, practiced responses around it, subtle rituals that acknowledged the bid for closeness and accepted it, without hesitation, as something right and appropriate rather than something to be gently corrected. When I first read Doi's framing, I resisted it. I had absorbed the assumption that healthy child development means progressively reducing how much a child needs you, that a well-raised 3-year-old should need you less than a 2-year-old, and so on, each year another step toward the capable, self-sufficient child who handles things alone. Doi turned that assumption over completely. He wasn't arguing that dependence should be the destination. He was arguing that the freedom to depend, when a child genuinely needs it, is the root system from which real independence grows. That these two things aren't opposites. That one makes the other possible. The research behind him is more substantial than I expected. Kathleen Behrens, a developmental psychologist who spent years comparing Japanese and American attachment patterns, published a key cross-cultural study in 2004. What she found was that Japanese caregivers were significantly more likely to respond to a child's bid for physical closeness with immediate wordless reception, a hand, a lap, a pause in whatever they were doing. She also documented that Japanese caregivers expressed notably less discomfort in response to dependent behavior than American caregivers did. They did not read a child crawling into a lap as something to redirect, and the children in those interactions returned to independent play faster afterward, not slower. That finding matters because it runs counter to the instinct most Western parents operate from. Most of us assume that giving a child what they're asking for when they're distressed will reinforce the distress. The evidence tells a different story. A child who knows the lap is always there doesn't need to cling to it. A child who has been told to manage alone learns to hide, not to cope. This is what John Bowlby theorized in the 1960s, and what Mary Ainsworth's strange situation studies confirmed across thousands of children over 2 decades. A child with a reliably available caregiver becomes what researchers call a secure base explorer. They venture further, take more social risks, and, this is the part that surprised me most, they are significantly more likely to confide in adults when something is genuinely wrong. The child who is told, "Be brave, you're fine," at age 4 is often the teenager who handles serious problems alone at 14. The child whose quiet crawl into a lap was welcomed is the one who knocks on your door at midnight to talk. One detail that stuck with me when I read Doi's original text: he described Amae as the emotional equivalent of the feeling a nursing infant has toward its mother, that wordless, whole-body trust that another person's presence is a safe place to land. His argument was that this feeling does not disappear as children grow older. It transforms. It becomes the capacity to trust, to be vulnerable, to reach for help when it's needed. Strip it away too early, and you don't get independence. You get a child who learns that needing people is something to be ashamed of. What strikes me about that framing is how much it explains, not just about children, but about the adults we become and the things we learn to carry alone. So what does honoring Amae look like in ordinary daily life? Doi was a psychiatrist, not a parenting coach, and he was not prescriptive. But researchers observing Japanese families over the decades have identified 3 patterns that caregivers use almost unconsciously. 3 small rituals woven quietly into the fabric of everyday days. The first is what I think of as the unhurried lap return. When a child comes needing physical closeness, mid-conversation, mid-task, mid-anything, Japanese caregivers characteristically receive the child first, even briefly, even just with a hand resting on a shoulder for a moment, then return to what they were doing. The sequence matters more than the duration. Child first, task second. Not, "Let me just finish this one thing, then I'll hug you." Over hundreds of such small interactions, the child's body learns something foundational. I don't have to compete with the adult world for a place in it. The second ritual is the silent handhold during transitions, a new environment, a first day somewhere, a moment of quiet social anxiety. Japanese caregivers often respond not with verbal reassurance, but with presence. Not, "You'll be fine, look how fun it is," which quietly asks the child to override what they're already feeling. Just a hand, held until the child releases it first. Behrens documented this as a distinctly common Japanese caregiver response, waiting for the child's nervous system to settle rather than verbally coaching them past their discomfort. Research on cortisol regulation in young children suggests it typically takes 10 to 30 seconds of calm physical contact for the stress response to begin to drop. 10 seconds of patience. Most of us don't give it 3. Something that genuinely surprised me when I dug into this: children whose caregivers use more physical holding during stressful moments, rather than more verbal instruction or reassurance, show stronger emotional regulation by age 5 in longitudinal studies. Not weaker. The body learns safety faster than language does. The third ritual is what Doi called the "tell me later" pause. When a child approaches with something to share at an inconvenient moment, the Japanese caregiver response he described wasn't a dismissal. It was acknowledgement paired with invitation. "I hear you. Tell me later, and I want to know." That last phrase is the hinge. "Not now" closes a door. "I want to know" keeps it open. Over hundreds of such small interactions, the child registers something essential. My inner world matters to this adult. They're managing time, not rejecting me. Some viewers may push back on what I'm about to say. The Western habit of asking children to use your words, to explain what they're feeling, to verbalize what's wrong, it comes from a genuinely caring place. But Doi's framework suggests that sometimes we are asking a child to skip the somatic step entirely, to translate a body experience into language before their nervous system has had a single moment of physical contact. Amae says the contact comes first. The words, if they come after. The body must feel held before the mind can speak clearly. That's the piece of this research that should sit with us the longest, not as a criticism of any individual parent, but as a question about what we have collectively been taught to value. Verbal self-sufficiency, early emotional articulation, the quickly soothed child who moves on fast. These can be signs of security. They can also be signs of a child who learned very early that their inner weather wasn't welcome here. What would you do differently tonight if you genuinely believed that fully letting your child lean on you now is what makes them capable of standing on their own later? Leave a thought in the comments. I read all of them. This is what decades of attachment research returns to consistently. The children who develop the deepest, most durable independence in adolescence are overwhelmingly the ones who had a secure base in early childhood. Not children who were pushed to manage alone, children who were held, calmly, without shame, until they were ready to let go themselves. Amae isn't the opposite of independence. It is the root system that makes it possible. The phrase to try tonight, one swap, nothing more dramatic, is this. Instead of, "You're fine," try, "I've got you." 3 words. They don't ask your child to override what they're feeling. They say, "What you're carrying is real, and I can hold it with you." That is what Takeo Doi spent his career trying to name. That is the quiet signal, repeated over years of ordinary moments, that wires trust deep enough to last into adulthood. If this way of seeing children resonated with you, share it with one parent who might need it, and subscribe for more calm, research-backed ideas from the world of Japanese and East Asian child psychology. We'll be here.